How's my people doing? Happy Friday Eve or Thursday. I'm going to try to come on more regularly on TikTok Live. It's been a while. I used to do it regularly, but not much of a fan of TikTok, honestly. God bless you too. Hey, what's up, man? Haven't seen you in a minute. Yeah, like I said, I don't get on TikTok Live quite as often as I used to, but I do most of my content now on YouTube, and then I make reels from the podcast and put them on TikTok. So I'm a part-time TikToker. Well, thank you for the follow. Thank you. But yeah, so I mean, this kind of happy hour, as I titled it. So if you guys want to talk about anything, we can do some Q&A. We can talk about the short season of Satan, which is kind of the topic du jour on my channel right now, which kind of encompasses lots of stuff. The mud flood, old world buildings, obviously eschatology, the gospel, all the things, all the things. Hello. Spoke with some older folks about Tataria, mud flood, millennium rain. Fellow clumsy Christians. Okay. We were at a tire shop. Okay, so how did that conversation go? I think that is one of the topics I like to talk about the most now is the mud flood, because now I have some context to the mud flood. Because before it was just kind of strange, and I really didn't know where to put it. But if it's possibly a cover up of, the millennial reign, now we've got something to talk about. I mean, now is it? I'm not sure we can conclude that for sure, but it is interesting. Mud flood covered up for the real flood? No, I don't think so, because I think what the mud flood is, I think I think the best theory I've heard on this is the mud flood is actually a worldwide earthquake, an earthquake that was so powerful that it liquefied the soil and civilization sunk. I mean, that's why everything's buried, because it's kind of like, where did all the mud come from if everything sunk? I mean, it would have had to come from somewhere. So it makes more sense that you have soil liquefaction, is what they call it, or liquefaction, and things literally sunk into the ground. That's why it's everywhere. And so what kind of an earthquake could do that? I mean, so there's two theories. We have this is in the short season theories. Two theories. Maybe when Satan was released from the pit, it was a massive cataclysmic event when he was released. But on the other hand, part of me thinks that something such an earthquake could only have been an act of God. Satan might be the god of this world, but he's not all powerful. I mean, whatever did that, there's evidence of a worldwide earthquake, destruction all around the whole realm. Could Satan do that? I don't know that he couldn't, but I don't know that he can either. So, yeah. Yeah, it's very evenly distributed. That's what I was saying. It's funny because if you think about like the Roman ruins, right? And you see all these pictures of like Rome, even the Colosseum was once like buried under the ground. I think most people don't know that. Like the Roman ruins had to be dug up. They had to be excavated. People don't know that. The whole thing with like the Easter Island and like the Moai statues. So there was a time where people thought they were just heads. And then it was very recently, people said, guess what? They have bodies. And in some cases, the bodies go 20 feet underground. And then you look up, like I said, you go look around like the Middle East. I think there's some gate in Iraq, ancient Babylon. The gate is like 25 feet tall, and it's literally buried under the ground in the 1850s. They had to dig it up. That is insane. I mean, that is insane. Like Göbekli Tepe. So Göbekli Tepe is in the news for a lot of like modern archaeologists. That supposedly it's the oldest site in the world, and I think that guy Jimmy Bright Insight actually had a video recently saying the World Economic Forum would not let them excavate that site anymore. Okay, so the real question is, how was it buried though? Because it's like, I think they said they only excavated about 5% of this place. I mean, it's got like, yeah, again, 20-foot tall megaliths under the ground. So what the modern archaeology says is their best theory is that somebody buried their own temple. What? Buried everything evenly? Like, it's literally completely under the ground. It's not like a pyramid where people could actually cover up stuff and then there would still be a mound. It's like even across the world. I mean, that's the thing. It's like if somebody told you to bury your own house, you could bury it with enough time, but it would end up being like a pyramid or something like that. It'd be a big mound. But then they say, well, you have to even it out. So you got to bury the rest of the neighborhood. Oh, and the rest of the city too. Come on, guys. Like, that's who does that? No one, never. Why? So that point being is then you go to modern cities, and I think this is when it gets the craziest, is there's stuff buried around modern cities. Evidence that basements are like halfway under the street. They're basements, but they're really not basements because there's windows that are kind of at ground level and sometimes slightly below ground level. And then sometimes they brick them up. Sometimes the street goes up with the building. Like the windows literally disappear as the street goes up. That's weird. There's underground parts of every major city around the United States. That's weird. JT, keep in mind, John is 2,200 years old now. Oh, yes. And obviously, the alternative view is perhaps the Apostle John is just hanging around waiting for the end times to start. He's like Beetlejuice. He's like somewhere out in the desert, somewhere out in the wilderness, and they're saying, hey, what are you doing out here, Apostle John? Who, me? Nothing. Just hanging around. He's got to wait for, the end times to start. No, but I do think that there's something. Oh no, my dog. There's something very fishy about. There's something very fishy about the mud flood, the old world buildings. Yeah, underground Atlanta. What about underground Atlanta, underground Portland, underground Sacramento, underground Seattle? All these West Coast cities with undergrounds, highly suspect. They seriously have built their cities upon older cities. Hawaii is crazy. Look at the Windward Mountains. I will have to look that up. Hilarious, Illo, but the serious note, underground Atlanta here in Georgia is interesting. Yeah, I mean, it's like what we're told is the people before us were more primitive than us. Obviously, they don't have the advanced excavating equipment and all that stuff. And yet it was very common back in the day to build things underground. Wouldn't it be harder to do that without all the heavy equipment we have now? But we don't do that now for some reason. When if you think as somebody gets more advanced, oh, thank you. If you're more advanced than the previous civilization, well, it'd be likely that you could do the same things, except you could do it faster and cheaper because you have better equipment, right? You got better tools. But they don't do that. So I think that's what leads us to believe that we are on the other side. We are on the wrong side of the peak of civilization. Because the way we see it, the way a lot of us have started to see it now, is sometime around, I don't know, 1700-ish, might have been the peak of civilization as far as what man could do. The structures he could build, the places the things they did. I mean, it's unfathomable how they could do those things back in the day. And after that, things have started to degrade. And I think that most people who are old enough to know, a guy in my mid-40s right now, I would say just in my lifetime, things are getting worse. They're not getting better. I mean, yeah, we got electronics. I'll give you that. But outside the electronics, is anything getting better? People are getting sicker. They're getting dumber. Our food's getting worse. The places we live are getting cheaper, and everything we get, we buy stuff that's like disposable. Everything is getting to be disposable. Everything. So to me, that is evidence that we are on the backside of a peak. Now, was that peak the millennial reign? Now, that is the $1 million question. That's the $1 trillion question. Because if that's true, obviously that changes everything. And I think that there's a lot of reason to believe that it is biblically. Because I said, I've done a lot of videos lately who have earned me no pats on the back from your traditional end times Christians. Because I say, hey, you know what? Jesus actually said he's coming back to the people he was talking to. He wasn't talking to us. Now, the Bible is written for us, but not to us. So if he was telling them he was coming back then, and there's lots of evidence that he did, despite what people think, is there proof? No. And I did a video about that. Is there proof? If somebody says, prove this to me, I can't do it. But such is faith. That if I said, I believe what he said, and I'm not sure how it all worked out, but I believe it, well, the default reaction is heretic. But I'm not a heretic. I just believe what Jesus said. Could I be wrong in some kind of way? Possibly, but I mean, I don't think. I mean, I'm positive that he's talking to them and he's saying that he's coming back to them. So I think that they believed it. That's why the letters from the apostles, they are saying that Jesus is coming back soon. His return is imminent because they believed it, because he told them that it would be in their generation. Some of you standing here will not taste death until you see the Son of Man coming into his kingdom. He told you, you won't go through all the towns of Israel before the Son of Man comes. He told he told Peter that, what is it to you that John is still here when I come? Like, what is it to you if I decide that? There's another verse. What he told Nathanael, that truly I tell you, you'll see heaven opened with angels descending and ascending on the Son of Man. I mean, all those things together, and he's talking about this generation. He's talking about making the Pharisees' house desolate. He's telling everybody, when you see this, the parables are about a master going on a trip and returning to those same servants. Over and over again, the churches in Revelation all been destroyed, all that stuff. So obviously, the letters to those churches that don't exist anymore. I mean, it's all about that time, the first century. Okay, so you take the first century, and let's just say he came back then for argument's sake. There's 1,000 years, because that's what it says in Revelation 20. After that, the beast and the false prophet are thrown into the lake of fire. Then there's 1,000 years of peace. Now, here's where I think it's a little twisted for the modern church, the way they teach this. They teach that Jesus was going to be ruling from a physical Jerusalem in a very fleshly way. He was literally going to sit on a throne in Jerusalem. I don't think it was ever that way. I think that's a misinterpretation, because when Jesus is talking about the kingdom, he's saying it's the kingdom of heaven. How often, when Jesus talks about the kingdom, he calls it the kingdom of heaven. So why is he calling it the kingdom of heaven if it's going to be on the earth? I think what the kingdom was and is, the kingdom of heaven is literally a version of, just like Jesus, he's partially spirit, he's partially flesh, he's partially physical and spiritual. So he can walk through walls, but he can also eat meals. So I believe the kingdom of heaven, New Jerusalem, is also like that. And it was always like that. So that place exists. It existed in the times of the apostles, because in Hebrews, I think Hebrews, was it 12:22? It mentions the heavenly Jerusalem, where there's angels. I believe that that's where the saints are. That's where Jesus is. And during this time of the little season, we can't see it, and so we can't perceive it, and that's why we can be deceived. But during the 1,000 years, there was a time of mostly peace and prosperity on the earth. It was a good time where people were free without the devil deceiving them. This devil was put in the bottomless pit for 1,000 years. People could make great buildings. They could make great art. They could make great music, great sculptures, like things that we don't have the time to do, because we are hitting that time clock, right? We're in the rat race. We're running that hamster wheel when we're supposed to be at the peak. Obviously, again, we're not at the peak. It doesn't seem like that. So I think that the way I'm seeing it, if there was 1,000 years, we're obviously post 1,000 years, because if you guys have followed me, or if you followed any creators similar to me, we've exposed lots of evil. So I don't believe we're in the millennial reign, because if the millennial reign was happening right now, the devil is everywhere. The devil is very active. The demons are very active. This seems like the little season. It seems like this is the age of deception, because if, like I said, I'm sure that lots of you guys, if you're watching this live right now, you would likely to agree with me that there might not have been an ever more deceptive time than we live right now, where the news is fake, the fake movies, the fiction has more truth in it than the nightly news. I think that seems very obvious to me, that you can't trust almost anything you've ever been taught. Everything you've ever been taught, you have to re-examine it with, wow, they lied about that too. Everything. From the schools to the churches to the hospitals to the doctors to everything. Everything, we're like, what can we trust? This is what I can trust. So this is why that I go back and I say, well, if Jesus says he was coming back then I believe it. What about this? What about this? What about this other thing? I don't know. I don't have answers for everything. And I probably never will. If I can't believe the news, well, how can I trust the history? When the history, literally, they tell you all the time, history is written by the winners. Have you ever heard that slogan? Yeah, obviously so. Obviously, the people who win the wars get to write the books. And obviously, you ever heard of the golden rule? He who has the gold makes the rules. So in America, Rockefeller had all the gold, and he created the modern school system. And so it just so happens that the robber barons are credited with everything that we have in society right now, right? Like the infrastructure, like electronics, the medical system, the the education system, you name it. So they are given credit for all the things. And I believe that there was a previous civilization that's been covered up. And I mean, you call it Tartaria, call it the old world, call it whatever, maybe call it the millennial kingdom. That stuff was hidden from us. And then the people who founded that stuff, the Freemasonry that they took over, they claimed that they did it. They, like I said, the Freemasons, they did not build anything except for a system of lies. They've hidden a lot of stuff. So that's why it's like, you ever seen an old Freemasonry temple, and it's like this epic building. Like there's the Scottish Rite one in Washington D.C. I was just there over the spring, and it's a straight up temple. It's amazing, and you're like, man, those Freemasons were really good at building stuff. Go look at a recent Freemasonry temple. It looks like a mechanic's garage. I mean, it's just some random, just completely plain building. And you're like, well, I guess they're really not teaching them how to be Masons anymore. Maybe the Freemasonry title really did come from that. Here's some Freemasonry. I just found this. Hey, guess what? I built this, guys. I built it in 1 year. And that's what we're taught. So that being said, it's like, obviously, so that's been the focus of my content lately, and that's probably what it'll be for a while, because every lie, and every answer to why would they lie, it makes sense in this context. They are all bomb shelters. Well, that's another interesting thing. I've done a couple of videos recently about Fallout, podcasts about the show Fallout, and I just can't help but think. I cannot help but think. So even biblically, that during the apocalypse, it mentions that the kings, the rulers, the mighty people, they're going to try to go under the ground, in the caves, in the rocks. They're going to try to hide out from the Lamb, the wrath of the Lamb. So is it possible that there's this large infrastructure of tunnels, fallout vaults, think the DUMBs, like the deep underground military bases, are there underground tunnels around the world? I would say, without a shadow of a doubt, there are. Now, the extent of them, that's the real question. How far do they go? Like, who's down there? What's down there? What are they doing down there? I mean, these are questions that we've all asked. How can we know? But I couldn't help but think when I was watching that show Fallout that what they're showing you is the merchants in that game, in that show, they cause the apocalypse. They're the ones who drop the bombs. So they're the ones who build the vaults. They drop the bombs, and then so you have all these people down in the vaults, riding out the apocalypse, and then they're told that one day they're going to get to go back to the surface, and then they're going to repopulate the earth. Okay, so what if? Okay, this is crazy time. This is speculation time. This is for entertainment purposes only, TikTok. What if, before whatever the mud flood was, what if people went underground, right? See, isn't it interesting when you see these early videos of these old cities, you see like aristocrats, right? All these real rich looking people. And then there's the orphan trains and all that. We'll get into that later. But what's interesting is, what if people went underground to ride out that thing? And in the show, people were under the ground for 200 years, right? 200 years in the show. Lucy, again, interesting, the symbolism. Lucy has been released from the earth, right? Lucy, Lucifer, short season of Satan, Satan being released. That being said, she's told, like everybody else in the vault, that one day they're going to come up to the surface after, I guess, the radiation levels are okay, that they'll repopulate the earth. Well, then she gets back up there, and then she realizes they actually tried to repopulate it before, and she missed it. But the point being is, like, life is going on the surface of the earth while they don't realize it. They don't realize the top of the earth is inhabitable. So there's literally cities of people, kind of, or groups of people down in the earth who have been living there the whole time, and they've been lied to too. Meanwhile, you have scientists doing experiments on these people. Could that be more than fiction? Like I said, can you imagine that today that something like that could actually be going on? And I'm like, yeah, I think it could. I mean, we would have no idea. We would have no idea. There's always those memes in the movies about secret military bases where they're doing the craziest stuff, and obviously they're top secret. And sometimes these shows where it's like it's over the president's clearance level, even he doesn't have access to what's going on in there. I think that actually makes a little sense. I think that some of the weirdest stuff probably in this world is in this earth, like underneath. There's so many legends about caves and secret societies and advanced civilizations under the earth. I think mythology like that came from a true place. And I think that, yeah, it makes sense. It makes sense. I mean, they lie about everything. They never tell you if it was true. I mean, I could be way off base, but, like I said, for entertainment purposes only, TikTok. So guys, this is not a call to action of anything. This is just, I'm just saying, I'm not saying trust me, bro. I'm just saying. Let me see to get some questions here. I think certain structures were already here, like a default map on a video game, not built. Yes, I believe that to be true. I believe that like the West Coast. Here's a good example of this. I've brought up these examples before. So you look up really old maps from like the 1500s. Chicago's on those maps. That don't make no sense based on what we've been told. Because what we've been told is Chicago was not Chicago like we know it until like the 1860s. Like in the 1840s, like Chicago's like supposedly nobody lives there anymore or lives there. It's only like a couple cabins and some tents, very small place, right? Well, why would they ever put it on the maps before that? Why would they put that on the map, period? Another place is San Francisco. San Francisco is in the news for being a major port in the 1830s, when in 1849, San Francisco only had 1,000 people. It was a major port 10 years before that. Now that don't make no sense. It makes more sense that these cities were already there. These cities, again, they were founded. They might have been dug up. Another example is Kansas City. You guys ever seen those pictures of Kansas City where it's like literally had to be excavated? There's dirt everywhere. There's dirt taller than the buildings. Like literally they're showing like a dirt mound bigger than like a 5-story building, and it's like built right next to it. They would not have done that. They would have cleared out the dirt before they built it. You're from Kansas City. Have you ever looked up those pictures? Look up the pictures from the 1800s of Kansas City with the dirt everywhere. It'll blow your mind. God bless you as well. Let's see. Let me see. I don't believe we can count years. I think they've changed the calendar. Yes, I think that is. I think it's a bit simplistic when people say they've added 1,000 years because they put a J or an I instead of a 1. That being said, I think that they have manipulated the time a little bit. I don't know how much time. I think it would be too easy to say that. I think, unfortunately, if I knew more about the astronomical clock, you think about the Genesis 1:14 talks about how God put the sun, the moon, and the stars in the sky for signs, for season, for days, and for years. I think that if you knew how to calculate like the constellations as far as like the age we're in, I think you could actually calculate how long it's been. I don't know how to do that though, because I think you have to do it during the daytime when the stars are not even visible. But I think people have done that. So you'd have to really be smart. You'd have to really be to study that. I might have to invest in that one day because I think that's the only way to really know. Because what I think each age is 2,160 years. If you could line up some of the other markers to figure out when was what, then you could know. Outside of that, I don't really know. What's the topic? I'm sorry, I'm new. If that's annoying, maybe. The topic right now is history is a lie. Are we in the season of Satan's deception? That's what it is right now. Let me see. I would love to know exactly who decided all the symbolism should be placed on the U.S. currency. Well, I think Roosevelt was in office when they put the Illuminati eyeball on the back of the dollar bill. They made that the Great Seal of America. I mean, that's pretty sus. Actually, if you want to look that up, there's a good book called The Illuminati by Jim Marrs, and that's they talk about that in the book. Pretty good book. I don't agree with everything he says. I mean, honestly, I don't agree with everything anybody says, but that's a good book. That'll put you on a high level of understanding for lots of these things. Those pictures are nuts. I lived in KC for over 25 years. I never hear or seen those pictures. Yeah, those things will blow your mind. That's the stuff they never taught us in school. Again, who taught us this? Who put the curriculum in the public schools in America? The guys who are credited with creating America. Like I said, there's that show on the History Channel, The Men Who Built America. The men who built all the lies. Yeah, I've been trying to figure it out for a long time, but I know there's some truth to it. Lucy is very sneaky. That's right. Yeah, I mean, the devil's crafty. It's in the ending of deception, but it's going to peak before it comes close. Yeah, it will probably get worse. Probably based on the truth coming out now. We're at the end of the age of the devil deception, going into the kingdom age. I mean, I've said this like a lot of people, that when I first started making content, I'm focused on the end times, right? The end times, which obviously, if you believe like the futurists believe it's been the end times forever, which obviously that's a lot of days, right? But or if you believe a day is 1,000 years and 1,000 years a day, it's only been like 2 days, so not really that long. Sorry, that was an eye roll. But when I started to look into that, I think most people do see that it seems like we're coming to the end of some kind of a cycle. It seems like that. Are we? Again, it seems like that. So even if we're not in the end times as we've been taught by like the dispensationalists, it does seem like we're coming up to something. I was talking to my brother today. I know a lot of people are like me that with the inflation or whatever you want to call it, the the prices at the grocery store, the price at the pump, this craziness with the election coming up and everything, it does not feel like this is sustainable. Does anybody else feel like that? I was saying, unless there's an act of God coming soon, if we have another generation of people, 40 years, whatever you want to call it, I feel like the middle class is going to be completely squeezed out of this country. I mean, I feel it in my soul. Like you look at the modern landscape of like if you were 18 years old, maybe thinking about going to college, maybe just starting college, the American dream is done. The American dream is done as they told us it used to be. Or maybe it's not. Maybe it's the go to college, then start a family, blah, 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 get a job, all that stuff. I would encourage people to go right into being an entrepreneur, do something online, make some money that way. Go if everybody's going this way, go that way. But I would say in general, like that nobody can afford to live like this. You know, if you started with no money, how are you going to make ends meet in this super expensive world where like the average home in America is $436,000? That's crazy. I mean, the average wage is $56,000. So the average wage does not pay for the average house. That's a problem. That's a big problem. So then you think like the average rent in the United States is $2,000 a month. So you're talking about like half your money going just to pay for rent if you make the average income. That's not going to work. Because again, then you add groceries, bills, and all that stuff. It's not going to work. So what I'm thinking now is like that we're right up on the precipice of a cliff. And then what happens from here? I think that obviously that talk about the Great Reset, again, this is for entertainment purposes only. This is just wild speculation. But I think that, yeah, that whole talk about the Great Reset, we're like right there. We're right there. And the way things are going, people are going to be begging for it. We all made fun of that whole slogan from like, you'll own nothing and be happy. Well, they're probably half right. I would say that slogan's half right. I mean, there's going to be a point where people own nothing. Are they going to be happy? Well, it's going to be like the whole Judge Smales. You'll get nothing and you'll like it. I mean, that's where we're heading. So, I mean, I do believe that, yeah, we're coming to the end of that. We are definitely in the season of Satan. Satan rules everything. It appears that way. Not the hearts of believers, though. Makes you think about, what do the fallen angels eat since they're kicked out of heaven and can't? I don't know. That's a good question. I think they can eat regular food, though. What do you think manna was in the Bible? Well, we know it was the bread of heaven. What, it was like some kind of honeycomb thing? I don't know. That's part of what Jesus offers in the book of Revelation for the overcomers. So maybe we'll get to check it out. The Men Who Built America. That's an interesting documentary. It kind of gives you an overview of how they say this place was built. But if you watch it with a curious mind and a watchful eye, you will notice things that don't make sense about that story. And yeah, I would encourage you to check it out, though. I'm reading the Illuminati book right now, too, by Frank White. Oh, it's a different one. Okay, interesting. Can you create a continual updated doc page of sources for all of books, manuscripts? Oh, gosh, that's... If I ever get to do this full time, I will try. I can try to do that. What will be the peak? I don't know. That's a good question. Is there any other churches that believe in post-millennialism? I don't know. I mean, that's what I'm saying. I think that most of us who do what we do, and like the community we have, we're kind of without a home as far as like a brick and mortar church. I'd love to find one, though. Revelation 5:13, and every creature which is in heaven and on earth and under the earth. Yep, under the earth. That's right. 100% it seems like we're coming to the end of the cycle. People are waking up. I do believe that too. Another reset is coming. Seems like it. There's a difference between the end times and the end of the age. Well, I do think that's a good point. That's what the translation says in like my ESV Bible when it talks about when the disciples ask about the destruction of the temple, the sign of his coming in the end of the age. I think that they obviously knew that the age was ending. They knew that Jesus was there for that reason. And I think that that's what it is. It's like, so when certain translations say the end of the world, well, some of the translations say end of the age. I think most people would be way more accepting of this concept if they understood, no, it's like an age. The world didn't end. Even you think about like a post-apocalyptic movie where it's like, think Mad Max. Think The Terminator, where they could basically say at some point the world ended that day, and then obviously then you have like a post-apocalyptic era where like people are like using old junk and they're what's got that steampunk tech where they're like taking old machinery and they're making different things with it. That seems like, I think that was what the 1800s might have been like, maybe after the mud flood. I think there's evidence that could be the case, but it does not mean the earth as the whole earth. And I think that's maybe like the idea of like the globe model. When you see earth in the Bible, you're thinking this whole big ball, the ball earth. And so if the earth ends, the ends of the earth, they're like, what does the ends of the earth mean if it's a ball? Well, I think in the Bible, it just means land. And so when it says world or age, obviously that's a big difference as far as our mind works. So the end of the world, the end of the age, people are way more accepting of that. What creatures are under the earth? That's a good question. That's an excellent question. That's what we were kind of speculating about. Who could know? It is not sustainable. I don't think we'll have an election. You're not alone in that idea. We're in pre-revelations. I give it 3 years max. No, I would say, okay, so Joshua Allen. Here's why I would say we're not in pre-revelations, because John wrote letters to 7 churches. Those 7 churches do not exist anymore. I did a podcast about that with my buddy Alpha Talks, where we talked about that the 7 churches in Revelation literally had to be excavated. Like they were buried under the ground, like 20, 30 feet under the dirt. They dug up old pillars, broken ones, some melted. The unrepentant cities from Matthew 11, all been destroyed. I mean, so dispensationalists would say that those churches were just ages. Oh, they were just like shadows of church ages, but they were actual people. The letters went from Jesus to John to these actual churches. So if Jesus told them he was coming soon to them, so what are they to conclude when they get a letter from Jesus? Right? What if you got a letter from Jesus and somebody said, nah, that's for 2,000 years from now. Don't worry about that. He's not talking to you about that. It's for way later. You see what I'm saying? Like, how could it be true to them and also 2,000 years later? Like I said, there's a disconnect there. It's crazy how many people are actually agreeing that too. It's no longer deniable. Yeah. We've been in the end time since Jesus went back to heaven. Now we're in the end of the age. Well, okay, see this, I believe that. And I thought maybe what the Bible's lesson is that soon means all the time. So therefore, like we're always supposed to be ready for the return of Jesus. Okay, I mean, that kind of makes a little bit of sense. Like you should always be ready. I mean, I feel like you should always be ready to meet your maker. If you live in fear of the Lord, that's how you should be living. But at the same time, again, the Bible was written for us, but not to us. So if these people are saying that Jesus is coming soon, Like, so here's the language that's written by the apostles. The Lord's coming soon. The end of all things is at hand, what Peter says in 1 Peter. John says it's the last hour. The book of Revelations tells John not to seal up this book, do not to seal up this prophecy, because the time is at hand. The contrast is the book of Daniel, that Gabriel tells Daniel to seal up this prophecy until the times of the end. The Daniel book is not sealed up anymore. Jesus was quoting from it when he was on earth. That was 2,000 years ago. I mean, like I said, you so kind of do the math on that one book says, do not seal this prophecy up. One book does. If the prophecy for Revelation was for 2,000 years later, why wouldn't that angel have told John to seal that prophecy up? He didn't. What it said was, I, John, are your brother in tribulation. It says, these are the things that are and the things that must soon come to pass. So soon has to mean what it means to us. And I said, I've talked about this a bunch recently, that the 1,000 years is a day, and a day is 1,000 years to the Lord. The context of what Peter's saying right there is that God is patient. God has certain requirements for these things to happen. And what the really requirement is, he doesn't want anyone to perish. He wants people to repent. So God's timing is not our timing. But Peter, he also says, the end of all things is at hand. So be sober. I mean, he's saying it's the end. Was it Acts chapter 2? After on the day of Pentecost, the Holy Spirit's poured out on the apostles, and Peter starts quoting from the book of Joel, talking about the day of the Lord. He says, in the last days, you know what he's saying? In the last day, there's going to be an outpouring of my Spirit. Young men will dream dreams, and old men will see visions. He's talking, and he said, what is it? Young women will prophesy. He's saying that they're in the last days. I mean, like, that's what he's saying right there. So at some point you have to say, are they right or are they wrong? Because they can't be both. They're either right or they're wrong. Because, I mean, the language is very specific. And if it's written to those people and they're talking to those people, it's either true or it's not. You know what happens when somebody tells you soon. You know what I mean? Like, I made a little meme about, like, Beetlejuice, the whole Beetlejuice meme, him like saying, hey, what are you doing? And just hanging around. It's like John waiting for the end times to start. Well, it's going to be soon. Soon means something. So obviously a day is 1,000 years, and 1,000 years is a day to the Lord, but not to us. We know what soon means. Soon means imminent. Man, I'm getting a lot of messages now. It's hard to keep up with this. Love your content, bro. Have you heard of Kim Clement? Yeah, I've heard it. I've heard of that person. They're a prophet, I guess, right? This is definitely not the way God wanted us to conduct our livelihood. I believe that's true as well. Let me see. Mystery Babylon is trading on souls of men. Well, I believe what Mystery Babylon in the Bible is Jerusalem. Jerusalem is the Scarlet Woman. And if you think about it, the whore of Babylon is the unfaithful Jerusalem. So with the knowledge of 70 AD, here's what happens: that the beast kills the Scarlet Woman, burns the Scarlet Woman with fire. The beast is a 7-headed dragon, 7 heads, 7 hills. The beast is Rome. The Scarlet Woman is Jerusalem. Between 70 or 66 AD and 70 AD, Rome destroyed Jerusalem completely, razed it to the ground, destroyed the temple. It says in Revelation 11 that the nations, the Gentiles, will be given 42 months to trample the holy city. That war, 3.5 years, 42 months. I mean, like I said, I think it's so obvious in Scripture that I can't even believe that people miss that. Is there demons in the little season? Oh yeah. I would say that pretty obvious. Yes, definitely. The Pope will counsel department with gold and possibly that what will happen. I don't know. Another reset is coming. Will there be another reset after the next one? Does it go on and on? See, I think that's a question. I think that's a mud flood question. That's a how much credit do you give the controllers? I think that outside of God stepping in, I mean, I think that it seems like they are trying to reset it. I don't know if they have the power to reset it like the mud flood. Again, I started this live off talking about whether the mud flood could have been an act of God's judgment, or it could have been maybe possibly when the devil was released from the bottomless pit. I'm not sure about that. Those are good questions. But I think that obviously, I mean, they've straight up told us. I mean, the World Economic Forum, Davos. I mean, Klaus Schwab wrote a book called The Great Reset. I mean, so yeah. I mean, are they going to try? I mean, if like I said, unless God steps in, I think that there's definitely going to be one. What do you believe the Vatican's role in all this is? Well, for one thing, their role is control of certain people, control of information. We always talk about the Vatican Library, the secret one that has 58 miles. Did you guys know that? Did the secret Vatican Library vault have 58 miles of bookshelves? What could possibly be in there? Or like I said, the better question would be, what's not in there? Can you imagine? We wouldn't even be debating some of these topics because we would know if we could go down there. Gosh, the things you could read down there. Oh man, you have to just dream. Adds Mad Max and the Terminator. Yeah, those are going to be like potentially survival guides. Maybe one day. It's kind of like that movie. Was it The Lost Boys? You know, when he's reading the vampire comic books, it's like a survival guide. I mean, it might be like that. Angels under the Euphrates. I believe those angels had been released. What's up, JT? Love your content. God bless. Well, God bless you too. Let me see where. Let me see. The Bible is old, yet it's still practiced. Well, I said I don't want to discount the Bible's impact on our lives, or how much impact it should have. I mean, that's what I'm saying. The Bible is written for us. It was left for us. It was not written to us. That's okay. I mean, if you think about it, before there was a Bible, there was men getting promises from God and believing the promises. So it's for our benefit that we have the Bible, and then we can know that when God promised men and women things, God fulfilled his promises. I think that's the best reason to have the Bible, is just to know that what God said was going to happen, happened. And again, that's why I would say in this view of the short season, my faith has not lessened, it's increased. Because if Jesus told the truth to those people then, they're not just waiting on some empty promise for like, hey, soon is forever. Soon is indefinite for, like, I think it seems more likely that I'm going to believe it if I can point to things that happened when soon was. If Jesus said things were going to happen soon and then the temple was destroyed in their lifetime, well, to me, that actually seems more evidence that what God says is going to happen when he says it's going to happen. I just love the thought of a 2,000-year-old John wandering around now as a street evangelist. I think that's kind of sad, honestly. Somebody made a point of like, it's like a John the Baptist situation where he's like in the woods hanging out with the squirrels and everything. Come on. You know the Lord's not going to do John like that. Not the beloved disciple. No, that he's not going out like that. I mean, he's reigning, obviously, Apostle John, just a mega star as far as like the faith. He's not wandering around doing nothing. I cannot believe. I mean, I can believe it, but I can't believe it. I cannot believe that the modern church is more accepting of the idea that John is 2,000 years old plus than the things that Jesus said to that generation happened in that generation. Like I said, people will twist themselves in all kinds of pretzels in order to continue to believe what they already believed. I could talk about this topic for days. Love it. Thank you. I really haven't considered Satan's little season until I saw your vids. Now I'm convinced we're living in it. Oh, well, that's awesome. Yeah, again, that's my best guess. I would say that I do believe for sure that what Jesus said about the first century was going to happen then. The Satan's little season thing, I would say that is my best guess based on the fact that we are in an age of deception. I think it's very obvious the devil's not bound right now, as far as I can tell. So yeah, that's my best conclusion right now. Both the church and future churches apply. Well, I do believe when Jesus said, those with ears, let them hear, just like everything else in the Bible, God's word is as sharp as a two-edged sword. And so if something cuts you, something convicts you, well, it's clearly for you. But it has to be true to those people first. If he says he's coming to them soon, well, then I think that's for them. If he's rebuking them and telling them they need to repent and do more works for him, go back to that first love they had, well, that's for us. But the I'm coming soon to them, that's for them. Let me see. So there won't be another great tribulation. Well, no. I mean, based on this view, if you think about it, and we should be happy about this, that Jesus said that there would be no tribulation like that before that ever happened and after that. Which I said, it's funny. I brought this up yesterday, that it's funny when you think about it like this, that the modern church is talking about, oh, look, this is the birth pains. Look how bad everything's getting. Okay, let's go back to the first century and talk about how bad it was. So Christians were being fed to lions. People were getting crucified upside down. Again, as we just passed the 4th of July, do you know where the term Roman candle comes from? A Roman candle was once a Christian tied to a stake on the side of the road and lit up like a candle. So it was a Christian on fire. So that was the Great Tribulation. During the Great Tribulation, the 42 months, the Roman Jewish War, 1.1 million Jews died in that war. Women were eating their own children. There was pestilence, plague. It was the worst time ever. Great earthquakes, all those things. All that happened right in that time. And so we should be thanking God every day that we don't have to go through that. The oppression I feel on TikTok it's bothersome at times, but it's not the Great Tribulation. I was saying, can you imagine an early church father? Let's just say like in the 2nd century. And he says, well, Jerusalem's probably still smoking. Somebody might say, hey, when are they going to build the 3rd temple so the end times can start? And you're thinking like, I wonder how bad the Great Tribulation is going to be bad, because that last 100 years was kind of rough for the Christians. Can you really imagine them talking about the Great Tribulation in the 2nd century or the 3rd century? Like them really trying to say, are they going to build a 3rd temple? It sounds absolutely nuts, because it is. The only reason we talk about a 3rd temple now is because certain international bankers made a country in the Middle East. They carved out a piece of land, and then they gave it a biblical name. You know what I'm saying? Like before that, nobody would have ever suggested that there's going to be a 3rd temple in the Temple Mount until then. So for the last, let's say 2,000 years, nobody's really talked about a 3rd temple until very recently. And then again, they're moving the goalposts back and forth now, because they're saying, wait a minute, if 1948 is the start of this, 40 years from there would be a generation, right? This generation will not pass away till all these things take place. Okay, so that's why in 1988, they had 88 reasons why Jesus was coming back. Well, he didn't. Okay, so then they have to decide, well, maybe it's 70 years. Well, 70 years came and went. So now are we talking about 80 years? That's not really a biblical generation. And if it was in the dispensational view, you'd say, well, you got to have a 7-year great tribulation. By the way, that's not in the Bible. The third temple's not in the Bible either. So, I mean, to me, like nobody was talking about a third temple until very recently. And it makes, like I said, the Bible never talks about one. So that's probably why they didn't. Peace, I'm out. Love you. Love you too. God bless, sister. How you doing, Steph? Who and what is the beast of the sea? It falls from the sky, right? Well, I believe that the beast, well, I mean, clearly there's beasts. I would say that like the Roman Empire is the beast, like in the Bible. Um, I think that the beasts are the empires. They could also be spiritual beings. I don't think the beasts are people. I mean, they're nations. So, but the beast in the book of Revelation, the one that destroys the harlot, that's Rome. Mud flood, can you explain it? Well, the mud flood, I mean, all we really know is there is evidence of a mud flood. There's no, without saying there's proof of one. There's evidence all around the world that things have been buried. As I said, I started talking about this earlier in the live, that there is sunken buildings, there's sunken, excavated old ancient ruins everywhere. From modern cities with evidence of a mud flood to ancient sites like Göbekli Tepe, things buried all around the whole world. Whereas, like, to me, what makes sense is there's this theory that it was a great earthquake. Because again, where did the mud come from if all these things were above ground? I think things in the realm sank with a great earthquake. They call it liquefaction, where it's like an earthquake shakes so violently. Like imagine if you had like an aquarium and you had like those little rocks in there and you might put a little castle on the top of it and you shook it violently. Why are they doing it? Why did I have to do that? That's weird. Yeah, you shook it violently, right? Then the castle would kind of start to sink into it. I think that that's what the mud flood was. But again, these are just this is me speculating. Again, this is for entertainment purposes only, TikTok. JT, I bought your Ancient Angels videos and watched them earlier today. Awesome stuff. Well, God bless you. Thank you. I appreciate that. Why do you think they have been released? Well, like I said, because I believe that I would say that we are into Revelation chapter 20, as far as my view goes. I would say the majority of the prophecies from Matthew 24, well, Matthew 24, everything had been fulfilled from what Jesus said. But I would say that, because he said all these things will be fulfilled before this generation passes away. So Revelation, the whole book of Revelation, I do not believe all fulfilled. But a lot of those are wrapped up into Matthew 24. So I would say we are midway through Revelation chapter 20 in the short season of Satan. I'm kind of confused on your belief. Do a quick overview. Well, I would encourage you, if you really want to know more, I've done several podcasts, long form podcasts, conversational ones. If you guys follow like Moon Henry, Tunai Hart, Demon Erasers, several people you like probably, Alpha Talks. I've done many podcasts talking about the short season of Satan with these guys. If you guys like YouTube, you ever heard of Understanding Conspiracy, the Clowns or Nephilim guy, Paul? He's my friend. I've done podcasts with him. So yeah, I'm gonna bounce off here in a minute. But yeah, like if you really want to hear more, I've got lots of content, and I will likely put this stream up as a podcast over on YouTube, maybe tomorrow. So if you guys want to get, because I talked about a lot of it today, so you'll get an idea of what I'm talking about. Tonight Heart, he's somewhere in here. Oh, what's going on, brother? How old are you, JT? Well, how old do you think I am? I'm 45 years old. I'm getting pretty old now. Maybe Jesus returns twice. Well, here's a theory. Here's a theory, and I feel like this is a biblically supported theory, that the day of the Lord does happen more than once. I can tell you a clear example of the day of the Lord happening in the Old Testament, because God tells Egypt, I believe it's in Isaiah chapter 30, or maybe it's Ezekiel chapter 30. He tells Egypt is about to experience the day of the Lord, and he says that Nebuchadnezzar and Babylon are going to carry out the judgment. So I think the day of the Lord, what it's really describing is, so the moon turning to blood, the sky going black, the sun not giving its light. It's God coming in judgment to a place. So yes, I believe that could certainly happen again. Obviously, the main day of the Lord described in the Bible is the destruction of Jerusalem. Which again, I don't know how often I need to repeat this, but I'll do it until I'm blue in the face. If you believe that Revelation was written in the 90s, 95, 96 AD, the temple was destroyed in 70 AD, and they're saying, okay, so if it's written afterwards, then it really doesn't apply to the book of Revelations or Revelation. Well, don't you think it's a big omission in the Bible that day of the Lord when Jerusalem was destroyed is not mentioned in the Bible ever? There's no book about that. There's no correspondence between apostles, a letter to a church. So John wrote 7 letters to 7 different churches, but he didn't have in the middle of that time, all like 25 years, he didn't write about the destruction of Jerusalem. You think about it. If you really think about it, you have from the times of Moses to like the times of David, the building of the first temple. It was a big deal when the temple got destroyed, the captivity, right? Very big deal. Obviously, lots of books about it. So then they build another temple, and then Herod the Great does all kinds of improvements to the temple, builds it probably unrecognizable to the second temple. Then that temple is destroyed by the Romans. Jerusalem's burned down. The nation of Israel is wiped off the map. That's not worth a book in the Bible? Of course it is. Of course that's worth a book. So the real question is, why is it not in our Bible? Well, for one, I don't think John wrote Revelation in 95 AD. I think he wrote it in the late 60s AD. Maybe around 65 AD. He said he was in tribulation when he wrote it. So to me, it makes sense. Jacob's trouble was the destruction of Jerusalem. Of course it was. How could it not be? So with that being said, if Revelation was written later, it would likely have a prophecy about a rebuilt temple, a new temple, them going back to the land. That's not in there. Why is it not in there? Because Revelation was written before the destruction of Jerusalem. Why do we have to read about the destruction of Jerusalem from historians like Josephus and Tacitus and not from an apostle? Because likely the apostles were dead at that time. We don't really know. I mean, like they don't ever give you an account of when John was killed. Supposedly he died of old age or something, or maybe he's 2,000 years old, as we've been talking earlier. It's likely that if we have no correspondence between the apostles after that time, it's because they died before then. I mean, even if you think about Matthew 16:28 says that some of you will not taste death until you see the Son of Man coming into his kingdom. 2 things there. He says, some of you will not taste death until you see the Son of Man coming into his kingdom. That implies that some of you will taste death. And then the other implication is he doesn't say you won't die ever. He says you'll see this first and then you'll die. I think they all died. John did not live 2,000 years. But the good news is I believe that they're living in the holy city now. They're living forever. They've got the crown. They're ruling with Jesus at this point. They're in the heavenly city. I think, to me, that is the omission of an extra book about the destruction of Jerusalem is a lie of omission about, again, our history that we cannot reliably trust. That doesn't mean I'm not throwing shade at the Bible. I'm saying that you can believe, like I do, the whole Bible, but also understand that, yeah, the original Bible, the original Ethiopian Bible had 88 books. We've got 66 now. Interesting number. Books have obviously been taken out of the Bible. The Apocrypha, are all of them God inspired? I'm not going to say that they all are, but I'm saying that there are holes, there are gaps in our history. And I think it's like I said, this is not an attack on the Bible to say that. That's just the truth. They discovered the plague in Colorado yesterday. What? That's troubling. I'm sorry. Let me see. I'm trying to catch up on some messages before I bounce. Definitely in a season of Satan. Look around. Yup. You should talk to My Lunch Break. I follow them on YouTube. I've not met them yet. I don't have any contacts with them. I would love to have them on the podcast. Thank you for explaining the mud flood. Thank you for explaining what you think on the mud flood. You're welcome. Demon Erasers does not put out much content lately. You're right. Demon Erasers is busy. I think that, like a lot of us, Demon Erasers is a little disillusioned with making short videos now. We need to make another movie. We've been in talks about doing that. It's difficult because we both have real jobs to fit in all the stuff we want to do. I think the most thing I said, that's why I do podcasts mostly, because that's what I like to do best. Great content, guys. Thank you. Thank you, Steph. Yo, bro, want to break the matrix? Let's do it. Let's do it, man. Apocalypse of Abraham explains what we are facing now. It talks about the last civilization. I've never heard that. Is that a show? Is that a movie? Is that a book? Animal sacrifice had been stopped in 70 AD and is starting back up. It is. Satan's short season would be less than 1,000 years, right? Well, I would believe so. I mean, when I went back to when I talked about Peter saying that a day is 1,000 years and 1,000 years is a day to the Lord, I think what the short season, based on what we know, there's not a lot written about it. It just mentions that Satan is let loose from the pit. He deceives the nations, and then he goes to gather them from the four corners of the earth, Gog and Magog. They march up the broad plain of the earth, which indicates a flat earth, guys. And they surround the holy city, and then they're burned with fire. So what I'm going to say is, some people have speculated that the short season could be 250 years, being like a quarter of 1,000 years. Perhaps maybe 1776 might have been when it started. That's a guess. Obviously, that's a theory. But the way I see it is that there's no certain set amount of time. Just like I said, because time and to God is different than us. I think what really is the marker is when Satan gathers the nations, when he deceives them enough to go do what they're supposed to do in order to fulfill God's prophecies. So yes, I would agree that it's probably less than 1,000 years, but it does seem like there's the New World Order agenda, the combining of the nations. Again, there's like a one world government, New World Order stuff happening. Maybe when that's all set, that's when the season is coming to an end. I appreciate your content. I'm glad I followed you, or would never have caught this live. Yeah, well, thank you. The Book of Adam and Eve is a great read too. It goes into great details of the fall. Yeah, I need to check that out. I've not read that one all the way. I believe we're in the last generation. Could be. You need to go and witness the dead Nephilim the Nephilim Death Squad. I've been on their podcast twice now. They're a little bit edgy for my taste. I mean, they seem like good guys, but yeah, they're a little bit let's just say they're a little immature, but I like those guys. I appreciate you, JT. Thank you for sharing knowledge and thoughts. Well, thank you so much. Let me see. Armageddon happens at the end. Well, Armageddon does not happen at the end because Armageddon happens before the 1,000 years. Gog and Magog happens at the end. That's the big. That's the real battle, I guess. It says that knowledge would increase and people are going to and fro happening now. Well, I believe there's also nothing new under the sun. So I do believe, again, if we're coming to the end of an age, end of a cycle, I do agree with that, though. People are starting to use these apps, this wicked technology for good as we come together, iron sharpening iron and learning more. So interesting topic. I can feel a change in the process. It concerns me. Yes, there's definitely a change happening. Gog and Magog is in the queue. Truth be told, I agree. So I would say that to me is really like, so if we are in the short season, as many of us have said, the main prophecy is not to look for the red cows going to Israel or the place they call Israel, to the people they call Israel. I think the real place to look is, are the nations gathering together? Are they going to perhaps, like when you see all the armies going to do one thing, and I'll just end with this. Here's the idea that we've been floating, no pun intended. So I believe the heavenly Jerusalem is a city that's both physical and spiritual. It can be exposed, maybe like we can't see it all the time. Maybe it could be exposed when they want it, when God wants it to be. Many people believe or speculate that it could be around the North Pole, the Rupus Nigra. Maybe that's why you can't go to the North Pole, because that's where the heavenly city is. That's where you get the Aurora Borealis, maybe where you see like God, the colors of God's throne there. So Alpha Talks has speculated, and I think it's a pretty good theory. What if all the alien movies, what if that is predictive programming to view a floating city as perhaps an alien threat? And then the armies of the world, band together in order to stop this extinction level threat to the world. As Ronald Reagan once said, we'd put away our differences to go fight for the salvation of humanity. Meanwhile, it's actually not aliens, it's the saints and Jesus himself. So when the armies gather to go fight this thing, that's when it all happens. I mean, to me, it makes more sense, this alien agenda, with that concept of like, that's the real deception. There's so much more alien stuff in the news right now. I think that could be it. That could be it. Thanos. Thanos in the movies, so Thanos in the Marvel movies, his ship is called the Sanctuary. How about that? The Sanctuary. After was in the beginning of Endgame, after he defeats the Avengers, he goes and rests. So after he wins, he goes and rests. You know where he goes and rests? The garden. You can't make this stuff up. You can't make this stuff up. And then of course, Endgame's all about like the Mandela effect. It's all about like change in time and alternate timelines and weird stuff. I think that was, as crazy that sounds, I think that is maybe predictive programming into what we should be looking for. I don't know. Satan is behind AI. I agree with that. Real aliens are fallen angels. They tell you the truth in the movies too. I agree with that. Aliens, angels, comes from the same place. But anyways, guys, I'm going to log off now. I appreciate you guys hanging with me. Like I said, if you guys want to watch this live, I'll probably repost this on YouTube tomorrow. Sometimes I think this was a lively discussion. I appreciate you guys hanging with me. I love you guys dearly. Yeah, go subscribe to my YouTube. Obviously, give me, like, subscribe, all the things. I appreciate you guys. I will talk to you guys soon.